am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more. Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below. Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death. of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners. So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time. When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight. The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Got the mic to work. Perfect.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue. The change happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know.
Yes. You'll never know.
For my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
It was. That is just a freaky sight to see. Is that a squid crab? Weird squid crab. Where is... We are looking for the little tree. Little tree, little tree. But yes, that is a freaky sight. And just all of its wiggling.
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished.
Pretty sure if I found myself in this place, I would be freaking out.
For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
Sinister quality? Yeah, this whole place is sinister.
The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain.
Ugh. Ugh.
Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity.
Ugh.
There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
Ugh. Yeah. I am looking for the tree. There it is. Dagon seemed to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. Supernatural horror in literature, H.P. Lovecraft. And Lovecraft's dreams about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered the surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl and can yet feel the ooze sucking me down. In defiance of Dagon, H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's interest in the topic stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea and everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such profound and lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. The Dweller in Darkness, Lovecraft, 1927, Donald Wondery? Alright. Yeah, nobody talks like this anymore. And if anybody does, they're trying too hard. But this is a wonderful way to see how people interacted with one another, at least correspondence. It is a very interesting way of expressing oneself. Wow. Look, it's Ammonite. So they have Pokemon. That's
As I
just
crawled
disgusting.
into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
That is disgusting right there. That is a giant blob. That's the continue. Is there anything else? But yes. I have no clue what that is. That is an octopus. That is a caputo. Ammonite. Volcanic eruptions sometimes result in the creation of islands. Most of them are transient and erode after some time, but some prove permanent. The floating prominence, porous rock created when superheated pressurized rock is pumice. That's pumice. Sorry. Is ejected from a volcano, can move across long distances and transport barnacles and macroalgae. I have no clue how do you pronounce that. That cling to it. In 2001, rafts of pumice created during the eruption of a volcano near Tonga, Polynesia, eventually reached Australia. Very interesting. Learning a lot. Learning a lot.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
What do we have? Where could it be? I'm sure it's got something. Can't just be this, can it?
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
Come on. Where is the tree? Is there no tree? Well, I guess not.
All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
Now, I have heard that this is a pre-made asset from a different game altogether. I don't know what game, but it is an interesting thing. Do we not have another thing? Just to continue. All right. Well, you know, I have a whale of a tale to tell ya. A whale of a tale to tell ya.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Is it a worm? The creator of the Cthulhu mythos and the fictional underwater city of Rakhla was convinced that life could not exist at the bottom of the ocean because the water pressure would make it uninhabitable. Today, we know that the darkest depths of the ocean are home to many peculiar organisms. The deepest dwelling fish we have discovered so far, the Mariana snailfish, can live about 8,000 meters, more than 26,000 feet below the ocean's surface, in never-ending darkness and at hellishly crushing pressures, hundreds of times stronger than those found at sea level. Upon glancing at the modern photos of deep sea creatures such as the anglerfish, the fang-tooth, or the viperfish, and other truly Lovecraftian characteristics, it's hard not to find some irony in this. That is true. Some of those fish are freaking feet. They're just freaky. There's one type of fish, but it's actually a colony that just attach end to end, and it can go for miles. And it brings new meaning to, like, human centipede type things. This thing at any point can just break off, but it is the largest or longest fish in existence. Try looking it up. But yeah, it's gotta be another octopus or worm or something.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base
that
of the
light?
mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Look at that. Is that... Don't tell me that's just a small clip in Foundation. Yep. It's shining when it shouldn't be.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
Ooh.
I know not why my dreams were so wild that night. But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again. And in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
Oh, there you are. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life was so intensive his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to daily meetings and loitering in New York cafes and resorted to hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off. But that seems a little weird. Pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of paper scattered across the floor. So he made himself look like a crazy person. That sounds like an interesting thing.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon, whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine. I felt myself on the edge of the world, peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined. Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
Only that, eh?
Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated.
Oh. There it is.
All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
I don't know if I'm just looking in the wrong place, or if there just isn't one here. I'm looking. It just seems to be that.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself. But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express.
Something I want to take a look at. Resume. Okay, we just have that. But we still have no tree. That was an interesting sound. Bit creepy.
For despite its enormous magnitude and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Yes. Examining my surroundings more closely, I see not a single one of the hidden or clues.
The moon, now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope.
Look at all those symbols.
Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures.
All right, come on. Where are you? There's gotta be something. right? Something. Well, apparently not.
The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books. Consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like.
Yep. You've got sea turtles. That is a great white shark. Hammerhead. Looks almost like another great white shark. And then another one. Jellyfish. Seahorse. And several seashells. I don't know what they would be. Whale, crab, starfish. Another ammonite.
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world.
Yeah. Also, if you take a look at the big image in the middle, you'll see Cthulhu sitting right in the middle, next to a crocodile and a shark. Then 2 sea turtles below, surrounded by fish. Oh, that's also kind of interesting. You have a multi-tentacled, multi-eyed thing on 2 opposite corners, and then you have a kind of mollusk on, or is it a volcano? Both of the other corners. I think it's a volcano exploding. And you have octopus, clownfish. No. Yes. No, that's not a clownfish. That is a kingfish. Squid. A clam of some sort. And then Cthulhu's head.
But whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Now, as for Cthulhu, he's actually a priest. Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through carvings at the Mountains of Madness, the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, the Shadow, the Out of Time, the Haunter of the Dark, islands emerging from the ocean, the Call of Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real events and mythologies. Imgo in the Whisper in Darkness. It's also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also conclude in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order not to spoil the ending. Just look at that. You just look at it. You got jellyfish. You got other fish. So many fish. That very well could be a whale shark.
Plainly visible across the intervening water on account of their enormous size were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Yep. So you kind of get sense that some of them have more of an eel tail, others have tentacles, and then maybe one or two has fish tails.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well.
Yep.
Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
Okay. Let's see if we can figure out whose face matches the body. I'm going to say that the far right matches the bottom. And second right is that guy.
They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips.
Yep. Then you've got that one. He's there to the far left. And then that one on the second left is the top one.
Glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall.
Yes. Pretty sure if you saw these faces,
Curiously
you'd be
enough,
scared.
they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Yeah. That's because he is the size of a whale.
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
Oh.
Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Lovecraft would often use the latest scientific discoveries as inspiration for his works. He would even update his stories at the last moment in order to make sure they reflect the latest breakthroughs. Unfortunately, this method was not without its flaws. After Lovecraft's death, the Piltdown man discovery mentioned in Dagon turned out to be a paleological fraud. I am not going to try to say that whole word, but that is a very Paleolithic or paleoanthropological fraud. Yeah, that is a very hard word to say. In 1912, Charles Dawson, an amateur archaeologist, announced that he had discovered the missing link between ape and man. The fossilized remains of a previously unknown early human years later. They turned out to be a forgery, but by that point, the fraud had already managed to negatively affect early research on human evolution. In the year when the discovery took place, the majority of the scientific community believed Dawson indeed found the missing link. In 1953, Time magazine published evidence proving that Dawson was a con man. Turned out that the fossils of the previously unknown early human consisted of a human skull, the jaw of an orangutan, and chimpanzee teeth. Some people just don't learn.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it. With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters.
Look at that.
Vast, Polyphemus-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
Now would be a good time to show that some things should change. Come on. Give me another clue into the past.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
Giant crab. I don't want to go yet. I want to stay.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
No.
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital, brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean. In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing.
Kind of funny. There's no one in the bed. But yet I'm here and I'm looking.
Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
There you are. In 1921, Lovecraft released a series of 3 essays. The Defense Reopens, The Defense Remains Open, and Final Words, later published as a collection titled In Defiance of Dagon, in which he rebukes a series of criticisms directed at his works. Some notable quotes: "I paint what I dream, and will let the public settle the rest amongst themselves." Mr. Monday asks the Raison d'etre of Dagon, "I will give it purely and simply to reproduce a mood. Its object is the simplest in all art: portrayal. The physical horrors of war, no matter how extreme and unprecedented, hardly have a bearing on entirely different realm of supernatural horror. Ghosts are still ghosts. The mind can get more thrills from unrealities than from realities. In the essays, Lovecraft touches upon the topics of atheism, materialism, the quest for truth, and the love of science. Lovecraft considered himself an atheist and absolute materialist, which he attributed partly to his early childhood interest in astronomy and science in general. In his own words, I am indeed an absolute materialist so far as actual belief goes, with not a shred of credence in any form of supernaturalism, religion, spiritualism, transcendentalism, metaphysics, metempsychoist, or immortality. I'm bad with words, okay? I'm just bad at them. All I say is that I think it is a damned unlikely that anything like a central cosmic will, a spirit world, or an internal survival of personality exists. They are the most preposterous and unjustified of all the guesses which can be made about the universe, and I am not enough of a hair splitter to pretend that I don't regard them as errant and neglectable moonshine. In theory, I am an agnostic, but pretending the appearance of radical evidence, I must be classed practically and provisionally as an atheist. Sources against religion, the atheist writings of H.P. Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft. Mythos, the myths and tales of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard. Any more? Ooh, another one. Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticisms written by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticisms to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the idea of world peace. Why any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the Conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments, and at the proper time, take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. ... No country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animals shall have miraculously changed. Well, I actually agree with this part. Humans are naturally kind of conflicting. We also fight over stupid things. But then again, if you have anything of value to anyone, you're going to have somebody who wants it and somebody who will fight over it. So that is a weird thing right there. Yeah. Why is there wires coming from the ceiling? Okay. Ah!
Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped throughout the Middle East as the ancient gods of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquests. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in an Australian poem and an underworld prison warden in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew, the word dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's work, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that resides in the ocean. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. Interesting. No, I don't want to. Tell me another one. Where is he? Where is another one? Give me another one. I want more. More information. Come on. Where could you be? More information. Well, looks like it's not gonna give me one. Who do you think that is? Whoever it is, they really like the female form, don't they? There's no one in the chair, and yet I got up.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Look at that. You see that? You see that? That's the Necronomicon. Lovecraft's attempt struggles to find a job in 1925 were influenced by advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine where he would write announcements and commercials. Feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. From an ad for Curious or Curtis Woodwork, Curtis Woodwork embraces both the usual structural units and the curviest contrivances of built-in or permanent furniture such as bookcases, dressers, buffets, and cupboards. Every model is conceived and created with purest art, ripest scholarship, and mellowest craftsmanship from which energetic enterprise can command, and made to conform rigidly to the architecture of each particular type of home. The cost, considering the quality, is amazingly low, and a trademark on individual pieces prevents any substitution by careless contractors. Source: Lovecraft Studies, Volume 7, Number 1, H.P. Lovecraft, S.T. Joshi. Now we'll go to Yep, there's the exit. Just want to make sure that that's the only one. August Derleth was an American writer and anthropologist. He also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's work after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Darth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted. Blah, I can't read tonight. With Lovecraft's views of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misrepresented in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Dareth after the author left the mortal plane. Man. Yeah, his friend is a bit questionable. Kind of a dick, if you ask me. But, yeah. Yes. What is it? Also, the Necronomicon is a kind of but yeah, if you think of the Necronomicon, it's a book that Lovecraft had created inside of his mythos. There's also a book called the Necronomicon. but it's more of a journal about somebody reading the Necronomicon or studying it. And there's also a interesting sci-fi movie called the Necronomicon. These days, the word scientist is widely accepted. Is a widely accepted term, but at the time Dagon was published, it was subjected to a wide debate. After the author used it in the story, critics pointed out that man of science was a more appropriate term to employ. He admitted in defense of Dagon, that if Dagon were to be reprinted, he would indeed use the phrase they suggested. Scientist was coined as an analogy to artist, to be used when referring to those studying different branches of science, yet in the 19th century and early 20th century, I know I added a word, scientific researchers in Great Britain and the United States were of the opinion that man of science resembled the term man of letters, was the only appropriate choice. Among other things, it was gender-specific, indicating that science was an endeavor to be pursued by only one sex. The term scientist became more accepted only after World War II, and man of science started fading into obscurity as an old-fashioned synonym. There's a lot of words that I can't sound out, and sounding out words is technically not true because there's a lot of words that can't be phonetically sound out. Do 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 do. There we go.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine, but the drug has given only transient surcease and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Yeah, I could definitely see that fellow man would just make fun of you. Lovecraft on tobacco and alcohol. Lovecraft hated tobacco, even though he used to smoke when he was 12, in order to look and feel like an adult. In his correspondence with friend Reinhard Kleiner, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidenced in his letter to Zilla Brown, dated 13th February 1928. As for the manner of drinking, I have never tasted intoxicating liquor, and never intend to, having a strong aesthetic is it aesthetic? Athletic digest at anything. I think it's aesthetic. Digest. Anything which blunts or coarses. These difficult words for me to figure out. I'm stupid. The delicate natural equipos of the evolved human intellect and imagination, drinking excited my personal repugnance, hence I don't drink. Let the herd do what they will. I am rather in favor of prohibition. Prohibition. The prohibition of any one antisocial force as well as any other. Source: The Spirit of Vision, Lovecraft's Letters to Zela Brown Reed Bishop, H.P. Lovecraft, Sean Branney, and Andrew Lehman, S.T. Joshi. That is a lot of names. You see that the walls kind of look like tentacles?
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm, a mere freak of fever, as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and floundering on its slimy bed, worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite. I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
There is nothing I can do. Nothing I can do.
The end is near. I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
Come on. You give me half the room, and yet you don't give me any clues to the past. Just a steady heartbeat of a tentacle slamming into a door.
It shall not find me. God, that hand! The window! The window!
Is there anything? Anything at all? Anything at all besides that? Just that, eh? See the weird shadowy aspect of the assets inside of here? That had to be hard to do. very hard. Looks like the window it is. And there I go. Thank you for playing. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We would appreciate it if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check out our other games and DLCs. Now, I have downloaded that, which it actually gives you the audiobooks for Dagon and the voice files for this game. It also has wallpapers and ebooks for the game as well. The little glass bottle DLC is not out yet, but I do plan on doing that. I will leave feedback, but I hope you all enjoyed this little game as well. It's my pleasure, and I know I wasn't able to read the beginning ones in the earlier part because my mic, but I hope you all enjoyed it. So, without further ado, I hope you all have a good night.